Kelly Krauskopf, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. If you were perfectly fine when Fever fans were bending over, kissing your ass, applauding your decisions, you better stand here and take it when Fever fans are pissed off, upset, and are voicing their displeasures. If our voice mattered that much then, you best believe it matters that much.
That's exactly where we are right now. Because Kelly Krauskopf just said something that has Fever fans across the globe asking one simple question. Does she actually understand what she has? Here's what happened. In a recent organizational meeting that was recorded and leaked, the Fever's president made comments about the team's future that sent shockwaves through the basketball community. She talked about building an enduring brand like Apple. She emphasized not wanting to rely too heavily on foundational players, and in doing so, she may have just confirmed every fear that Fever Nation has been whispering about for months. Let me be crystal clear about what we're discussing today. This isn't speculation. This isn't reading tea leaves. These are Kelly Krauskopf's own words, captured on video, now circulating everywhere from Reddit to Twitter to every WNBA forum on the internet. And the reaction. Let's just say Fever fans aren't holding back anymore. If you believe organizational accountability matters, if you think franchise leadership should be held to the same standard they hold everyone else to, hit that like button right now. Because we're about to connect some dots that the front office clearly hoped would stay disconnected, the brand is going to get as big and go as far as Caitlin Clark takes it. And I don't think Kelly Krauskopf understands that. And the latest video that is surfacing, floating around, being consumed by Fever fans across the globe because this is an international superstar they have on their hands, this may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. So let's dive into exactly what was said and why it matters. In the leaked footage, Krauskopf discusses the organization's vision for sustained growth. She mentions wanting to build something lasting, something that transcends individual players. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, right? Every franchise wants long-term success. But here's where it gets problematic. She specifically compares the Fever to Apple, suggesting they want to create a brand that isn't dependent on any single product. Then she pivots to discussing their foundational players, plural, mentioning Caitlin Clark alongside others, as if their contributions are remotely comparable in scale or impact. Let's pause there for a moment. Many of you have been saying this for weeks, and you were onto something. There's a massive difference between acknowledging you have multiple talented players and pretending that all stars shine equally bright. The Fever averaged around 4,000 fans per game before Caitlin Clark arrived. They were television rating afterthoughts. The organization was, let's be honest, essentially invisible in the national sports conversation. Then, CC shows up, and suddenly every game is selling out. Suddenly, major networks are fighting for broadcast rights. Suddenly, the Fever are part of the cultural zeitgeist, not just a basketball footnote. And we're supposed to believe this happened because of superior organizational structure. Reading between the lines here reveals something troubling. When leadership starts talking about not being too dependent on foundational players, right after acquiring the biggest star in women's basketball history, it suggests one of two things. Either they genuinely don't understand the magnitude of what they have, or they're uncomfortable with how much power that star wields within the organization. Neither option is good. Let's filter out the noise and look at the actual strategy being telegraphed here. The Apple comparison is particularly revealing because it exposes a fundamental misunderstanding of what made Apple successful. Apple didn't build their brand by downplaying the iPhone. They didn't try to make sure the iPad didn't overshadow their other products. They built everything around their revolutionary innovations and dominated markets because of it. You know what Apple never did. They never held a meeting where they said, "We need to make sure people know we're about more than just the iPhone." Why? Because that would be insane. The iPhone is their business. It generates the majority of their revenue. Everything else orbits around that gravitational pull. The same principle applies here. Caitlin Clark is the reason the fever matter right now. She's the reason sponsors are paying attention. She's the reason merchandise sales are through the roof. She's the reason fans who never watched a WNBA game in their lives can now name the entire Fever roster. And instead of embracing that reality, instead of building the entire organizational identity around maximizing her impact, the front office is apparently worried about seeming too dependent on her. Connecting the dots reveals a pattern we've seen throughout the season. The offensive system that sometimes seems designed to limit Caitlin's touches, the rotation decisions that occasionally make no strategic sense, the media messaging that constantly emphasizes team over individual excellence. None of this happened in a vacuum. It's all part of the same philosophy we're now seeing articulated explicitly in these leaked comments. The basketball community is buzzing about what this means for Caitlin's future in Indiana. Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in the Fever front office wants to acknowledge. She doesn't have to stay. When her contract situation allows for movement, every major market in the WNBA would build their entire franchise around her tomorrow. Imagine Caitlin Clark in New York, where the media market understands how to maximize superstar potential. Picture her in Los Angeles, where entertainment and athletics merge seamlessly. Think about her in Chicago, her home region, where fans would treat her like basketball royalty. Any of these destinations would embrace exactly what Kelly Krauskopf seems afraid of, building everything around their generational talent. This is where the karma element becomes almost poetic. In trying to protect the organization from being too dependent on Caitlin Clark, they're actually creating the exact conditions that might make her want to leave. When you don't feel valued, when your organization publicly suggests they're trying to move beyond you while you're literally carrying them to relevance, why would you stay? Fans aren't stupid. They see what's happening. They've watched other franchises mismanage generational talent before. They've seen organizations convinced they're bigger than their stars, only to watch those stars leave and take all the momentum with them. The reaction on social media has been immediate and brutal. Fever fans who spent the entire season defending every organizational decision, who showed up to every game, who bought every piece of merchandise, are now asking legitimate questions about leadership priorities. You were onto something when you noticed the disconnect between what the franchise says and what they do. This leaked footage just confirmed it. The gap between public relations messaging and actual organizational philosophy is now undeniable. Drop a comment right now and tell me what you think Kelly Krauskopf should do differently, because this conversation is happening whether the front office wants it to or not, and your voice matters just as much as theirs. Let's talk about timing, because that makes this even more problematic. These comments surfaced right after we spent an entire season watching Caitlin struggle within a system that often seemed to work against her strengths. We watched her deal with teammates who wouldn't pass. We saw offensive sets that minimized her impact. We witnessed coaching decisions that left fans scratching their heads. And through it all, the organization kept telling us to trust the process. Keep supporting the team. Everything is fine. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they're apparently having meetings about making sure they're not too dependent on the player who saved them from complete irrelevance. The comparison to other successful franchises is instructive here. Think about what the Bulls did with Michael Jordan. They didn't sit around worrying about being too dependent on him. They built the entire triangle offense specifically to maximize his scoring while still involving teammates. They made every roster decision with one question in mind. Does this help us win championships with Michael Jordan? The Lakers during the Showtime era didn't fret about Magic Johnson being too central to their identity. They embraced it. They built everything around his unique skill set and became a global phenomenon because of it. That wasn't an accident. That was intentional organizational philosophy executed at the highest level.
This isn't the NFL. This is the WNBA. A star is going to take the Fever where the Fever want to go. And that star is Caitlin Clark. Kelly, you're talking about being a leading brand. You're talking about sustaining growth, sustaining the interest level in the franchise. You know how that happens? Is if Caitlin Clark stays in Indiana, is if Caitlin Clark is participating in an entertaining and exciting brand of basketball that doesn't take away and diminish her skill sets, that doesn't turn off fans that have been following her for the last 3 to 5 years.
This isn't the NFL. This is the WNBA. A star is going to take the Fever where the Fever want to go, and that star is Caitlin Clark. Kelly, you're talking about being a leading brand. You're talking about sustaining growth, sustaining the interest level in the franchise. You know how that happens? It's if Caitlin Clark stays in Indiana. It's if Caitlin Clark is participating in an entertaining and exciting brand of basketball that doesn't take away and diminish her skill sets, that doesn't turn off fans that have been following her for the last 3 to 5 years. That's the part Kelly Krauskopf seems to be missing. This isn't the NFL, where roster depth and system can sometimes overcome the loss of individual players. This is the WNBA, where stars drive viewership, stars drive attendance, and stars drive revenue. And right now, the Fever have the biggest star women's basketball has ever seen. The social media backlash reveals how fans actually think about the situation. They're not angry because they're irrational. They're angry because they're smart enough to recognize when leadership is making a fundamental strategic error. They see organizations in other sports maximize their superstars, and they're asking a reasonable question. Why isn't Indiana doing the same thing? Multiple sources are whispering about tension between what Caitlin expected when she came to Indiana and what she's actually experienced. Not officially confirmed, but the breadcrumbs lead to a concerning picture. A player who wanted to compete for championships immediately finding herself in a system that treats her like one piece among many, rather than the transformative talent she clearly is. If these reports are accurate, and the organizational philosophy we're now seeing articulated publicly matches the internal culture, then Fever fans have every right to be concerned, because world-class competitors don't waste their prime years waiting for organizations to figure out what everyone else already knows. The leaked footage also reveals something about how the front office views its fan base. There's an implicit assumption in those comments that fans will keep showing up regardless of how the organization treats its star player, that the momentum built by Caitlin's arrival is somehow now independent of Caitlin herself. That's not how this works. Fans have been connecting these dots for weeks. They know the attendance surge is directly tied to one player. They know the television ratings spike when she plays and crater when she doesn't. They know the merchandise flying off the shelves has her name and number on it. Trying to pretend otherwise isn't strategic thinking, it's denial. Let's get into rumor territory for a moment. But sources suggest there have been internal discussions about offensive philosophy for next season that prioritize balance over maximizing Caitlin's unique abilities. If that's true, if the organization is actually planning to further constrain the player who just had one of the greatest rookie seasons in WNBA history, then this isn't just a public relations problem. This is a basketball malpractice problem. The WNBA community is lighting up with theories about what happens if Caitlin's patience runs out. Would she request a trade? Would she simply wait out her contract and leave as a free agent? Would she make noise publicly or handle it quietly? Every scenario involves the same endpoint: Fever fans watching their franchise return to obscurity because leadership couldn't recognize greatness when it was staring them in the face. The business implications here are staggering. The Fever's valuation has likely increased exponentially since drafting Caitlin Clark. Sponsorship deals have multiplied. Regional and national media attention has transformed the franchise's visibility. All of that momentum, all of that value, all of that potential evaporates if she leaves. And for what? So Kelly Krauskopf can say she built a balanced team that doesn't rely too heavily on any individual player. That's not a winning strategy. That's an ego strategy masquerading as organizational philosophy. Championship organizations throughout history have understood one simple truth. When you have transcendent talent, you don't fight it. You don't try to manage it down. You don't worry about what happens if it goes away. You maximize it. You build around it. You do everything possible to keep that talent happy, productive, and committed to your vision. The Fever had a choice when they drafted Caitlin Clark. They could have embraced being Caitlin Clark's team and built everything around that identity. Or they could have tried to maintain some illusion of organizational control that makes front office executives feel important, but accomplishes nothing strategically. Based on these leaked comments, it appears they've chosen the latter, and Fever fans are rightfully calling them out for it. Here's what needs to happen next. The organization needs to publicly clarify their commitment to building around Caitlin Clark, not vague corporate speak about foundational players and sustained growth. Clear, specific statements about organizational philosophy that place her at the center of everything they do. They need to demonstrate, through actions, not just words, that they understand what they have. That means offensive systems designed around her strengths. That means roster construction focused on complementing her skill set. That means coaching decisions that maximize her impact on winning. And most importantly, they need to listen to their fans, because Fever Nation isn't being unreasonable. They're being realistic. They see what Kelly Krauskopf apparently can't. That everything good happening in Indiana right now traces back to one player, and losing that player would be catastrophic. If you want to see how this story develops, if you want to stay ahead of the narrative instead of behind it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. Because trust me, this situation is far from over. The next few months will reveal whether Indiana's front office learned from this backlash, or whether they're committed to a strategy that ends with their superstar leaving and taking the Fever's relevance with her. We'll be covering every development, every decision, every signal about what's really happening behind the scenes. Because this matters, not just for Fever fans, but for everyone who cares about how the WNBA treats its biggest stars. The basketball world is watching. Kelly Krauskopf just told everyone exactly how she views Caitlin Clark's importance to the franchise. Now we wait to see if fan backlash and cold, hard reality force a change in that perspective, or if the Fever become a cautionary tale about what happens when organizations think they're bigger than their stars. Thanks for watching. And remember, in this league, stars aren't problems to be managed. They're gifts to be celebrated. Fever leadership better figure that out before it's too late.